I'm Tina Jordan with the A&A Data and Analytics practice, and it's a pleasure to be your host for this afternoon's webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to start with a few housekeeping items. We'd like to encourage you to participate in the Q&A portion of the presentation, which will be the final 10 to 15 minutes of the hour. Please use the chat box to submit your questions to today's presenters, and your questions will be visible to other attendees, or you can send them directly to me privately, Tina Jordan, and I will present them to the panelists at the close of the session. You're welcome to submit questions at any time, and as I noted, we will get to them at the last 15 minutes of the hour. A PDF version of a recording will be made available on the A&A website within a few days. And just a couple of A&A reminders. If you are involved in the function of direct response and direct marketing, we encourage you to participate in the 2021 response rate survey report that benchmarks direct response marketing in various formats. And we are collecting responses right now. You'll see the link on the chat box for information on how to participate. And finally, we will also send you information on our 2021 our 2021 two-day hybrid conference that will take place both live and virtually, Masters of Data Technology in Orlando, Florida, August 16th through 18th. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to today's presenters. The 2021 Genius Awards, what you need to know to win. Our host is Marc Vermut, Vice President, Marketing Solutions of Neustar. The presenters of the 2021 Genius Awards, Gayle Fuguitt, the Genius Awards judge. So she'll be looking at your submissions very closely with a hawk eye to look at your data-inspired assets. And one of our featured winners of last year, Damian Fernandez-Lamela, VP Global Analytics with Fossil Group. So with that, Marc, I turn the dais to you.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Tina, and thanks to the ANA for having us. We're always excited to be back to launch the Genius Awards, which we just launched this month, and to really advocate for marketers to go out and get recognition for the tremendous work that they've been doing. I'm fortunate and happy to be joined by both Gayle and Damian today. And before we kick off, we're going to be running through some slides, giving you some background on the Genius Awards, how you enter, how you win, how you should think about it. But really the meat of what we hope you take away today is going to be a conversation that I'm going to facilitate with Gayle and with Damian. And I thought it would be helpful before we jump in for each of them to give you a quick soundbite for why they're here today, besides Tina's introduction. So Gayle, why are you here today?
So I'm here to help lift up all of the folks that are online and are actually watching now, potentially the video, to lift them up to represent the voice of the consumer at the decision table. And to go and think about all the different ways that they've been able to do that, especially in this virtual world, and view their activities, accomplishments, and outcomes with the lens that Damian and Marc are going to provide in terms of the kinds of entries we've had in the past. And I'm going to give a little bit of a snapshot under the tent with the judges.
Awesome. Damian, why are you here besides us calling in 32,000 favors?
We had a great experience with the ANA Genius Awards, and my goal today is just to share some of that experience and help others go through this process, which at first it could be a bit daunting, but I think that we'll be able to provide some good advice today on that front.
Terrific. So it's going to be a conversation. I'll keep an eye out for the Q&A as questions come through as we walk through the different sections. So feel free, if you think it's appropriate, I'll keep an eye on it and interject into the conversation as we get insights from Gayle and Damian for being on both sides of the experience. So jumping in, the first thing that's really super exciting is we got a new platform. The Genius Awards is housed on its own website, geniusawards.com. It's always included the information you needed, history on the contest, as well as past entries and a way to enter. It's been updated and relaunched this year. The other thing to note is we will be sharing out the presentation that I'm walking through right now, as well as step-by-step instructions on how to enter, which is also on the website. One thing to note, because we upgraded into the fancy and it's interactive and it's a lot of fun just to poke around. If you had an account on the previous site, you're going to need to set up a new one on the new platform so that you'll be able to participate and enter this year. So geniusawards.com, we made it fun. It was always fun, but now it's interactive fun. So a little bit of history, and this is why I love being involved. I've been with Neustar for over a decade at this point, to the dawn of market share. And so I've been involved we're in 2020, I don't even know what year it is anymore, but I've been involved for the last 8 years in the program in supporting and engaging to make sure marketers are entering and we're highlighting the best of marketing analytics and data work that's occurring in the industry. So we launched it in 2013. Market share became Neustar a few years later. And last year, we had a record number of entries. It was fantastic to see all of the entries that came in. It made Gayle's job a little bit harder because she had to go through a lot more things, but it also made what we were able to highlight through the finalists and the winners a lot richer. And we hope that that level of enthusiasm and engagement is exceeded this year. And it was also our first virtual awards. We're hoping that this year the awards won't be virtual, or maybe some form of hybrid, but looking forward to the country reopening. In light of that, if you did interesting work around COVID last year and you're seeing the benefits of it, keep that in mind, that could be an interesting thing to focus on this year. And this year we're launching a new platform. This is something we have been committed to and we remain committed to, because what we want to do is highlight all of the work that the marketers, not just that we work with, but all marketers out there, we want to lift all boats, are doing with data and marketing analytics. So how do we find the best of the best in terms of the work that's being out there? We've been really fortunate to have a panel of diverse leaders in marketing analytics join us each year. While what you see up on the screen right now are the 2020 Genius Awards. One of those photos should look really familiar. Gayle has been one of our longest tenured judges, actually, working with us. So she's seen a lot. Hopefully you devote questions to her. She really has a good sense. It's why she's here today, of what the experience is like. But as you can see, we have CMOs at top brands, we have data scientists, we have top academics, and we make sure we also bring in agency and industry group leaders. This is a holistic picture and view of what marketing analytics should be, right? It's about impacting the entire organization. It's about threading it through the entire marketing ecosystem. And so we bring a diversity of opinions and experiences. One thing to note, we're gonna announce in the coming weeks the exciting new group of 2021 judges. It shifts over every year, so we can give people a chance to come on board. We have some people who have participated over the years who are tremendous throughput for helping guide our pool of judges each year, but it's going to be the same level of quality, and we're excited for who it's going to be. And I think one
Marc?
thing yeah, go ahead, Gayle. I was going to throw to you to ask about the experience.
Absolutely. I want to put in a little plug, because this year what I've decided to do is to actually step over to the side and create an opportunity for someone, my idea is to lift up the next generation to be able to have this experience. There's just nothing better. If you ever get the opportunity to participate in a judging process, first of all, you get to interact with this great group of people. You individually read entries, but then you get to compare your perspective to their perspectives coming from different vantage points. But second, it's just the skill building of going through a glimpse of the most important kind of what I refer to as bleeding edge, leading solutions in the industry at this moment in time. And it's a wonderful experience. It's worth every single minute of it. It gives you just a different window into what's going on in your world. And for me, it helped me recreate my world and reimagine it as part of that experience.
And what over the years as you've come down, so there's scoring to get to the finalists, and then there's a live judging conversation around going from finalists to winners. What's the experience like? Like, how collaborative is it? How many different points of view are coming in? And are there things that have stood out in those conversations to you that made it clear of what a winner looks like versus a finalist versus we need to work and improve on this story that we're telling?
Right. Well, it's highly collaborative, but I'm going to actually tee up and give a little sneak peek into Damian's presentation and the entry from last year, because you have a category like innovation, and innovation is defined differently by each person on this judging panel. But one of the things that we came to look for was something that was even more strategic than just the contribution. So it isn't enough just to talk about the fact that you used AI or VR. It's like, how did that actually impact the growth agenda for the company? And so, if you look at Fossil, just to give a quick plug, their vision is when timeless design meets the power of innovation, everything is possible. And so it's quite clear that if you look at innovative solutions in research, they were tied to senior management's goals. And so the conversation has evolved over the years to something that says, okay, don't just tell us what you did. Tell us how you did it, and what is the so what and now what actions were taken. And we've spoken as much about change management and interpersonal relationships and collaboration, as you mentioned earlier, as we have about the exact research techniques. And I'll just quickly close and hand all the rest of this to you, Marc. And
keep going.
But I just want to say, I don't think there's a researcher alive that doesn't think they have a unique perspective on a particular analytic technique or the right way to do something. And so you get this many people in a room kind of duking it out on different perspectives on how to do things. There is a mix of different points of view. So it's not just that the analytics, it's how unique they are, how differentiated they are from what's going on in the rest of the industry. But the most important thing is, what impact did that have on decision making? How did that change and impact senior management's view of the consumer, of consumer needs, of growth, and quite frankly, very selfishly, of the research executives in the company? It's an external endorsement.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about both of those things, about the quality and nature of the submissions that people make, as well as the benefits you get out of it. One thing I would like to say is I had the great privilege, I had to fight for it, of moderating that judging panel. And as Gayle said, it was passionate, it was well thought, it was reasoned, there was tremendous different types of experience and points of view being brought to bear. So keep in mind, as you're building your submission, since it's literally just what's going to be written, and then if you're a finalist, the video that comes along with it, you need to make sure that you craft your story clearly enough so that the key points you want to get across do come across. And Damian's going to be talking about how he was able to successfully do that, actually not once, but twice. Let's not call him a Genius Awards whisperer, but he has thought through like what it does take. One thing to note is if you have any suggestions for judges as we move into the future, please send us a note at info@geniusawards.com. We're constantly looking to expand network and representation, and we don't know everybody. So we're always happy to hear about great stars across industry, academics, agencies that should be represented on the panel. So please feel free to submit. Okay, one last thing before we get into the meat of it is the timeline that's associated. So first thing is, we're going to talk about why you should do this, but to be fair, there's a big dollar that's associated with it. It's $100,000 that is shared amongst all of the different winners to the charity of their choice. Doing good is also part of Neustar's mission and the ANA's mission. And what we love is the ability to highlight nonprofits that are impacting our world. So we do good at our jobs by doing really interesting work that helps our businesses. And some of the benefits is not just helping the business, but in this case, helping those organizations that are helping others. When we look at this, your first question is, can I enter? Who can enter? And the answer is client-side marketers can enter, or agencies can enter on their client's behalf. We do suggest that you let them know that you're doing that and you do it in coordination, because as they proceed down the process, they actually need to be involved. So do it collaboratively, please, because you do need the brand's permission to enter, and it's on the form where you submit. We talked about what you win. One change this year that's going to be really helpful. So we opened the nominations on April 14th. The final entry deadline is June 14th. So you still have a month and a half to pull this together. And for the first time ever, we're actually going to have a designated 1-hour ANA event to announce and introduce the 2021 Genius Award finalists on September 30th. Previously, it was on-stage recognition at the Data and Measurement Conference, the Masters, that happens before the Masters of Marketing. But this year, again, as the Genius Awards grow, I think in terms of prominence and quality, the ANA also recognizes that there's great value in showcasing those organizations that are doing great work and giving them the time and exposure that's commensurate with the work, and also inspiring the rest of the ANA membership base for the type of work that they can be doing, and giving some real case studies of what leading looks like. The winners will be announced as always during the ANA Masters of Marketing, which is this year, October 5th to October 8th. And there's also going to be, and Tina's going to share out the link for this for last year's program, half-day ANA member conference in December. We did our first version of this last year, which gave a chance to really highlight and dig into what the winners were doing, again, to showcase great work. That's what we really hope that the program does, right? It's not about recognition and giving back to the community alone. It's about serving as a platform to amplify and push the industry as a whole to do better, to do harder, to do more impactful, and to provide case studies that that really showcase what that looks like. Okay, so let's dig in. Let me just make sure. Okay, so I see no questions so far. So let's dig into the categories. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight and give you the definition of what it is. But I think what's really helpful is to hear Gayle's feedback on how judges look at the category, and then Damian's feedback on how he viewed the categories when he's entered in the past, and why he filtered to the categories that he chose. So I'm gonna list across first. I'm gonna name them and describe them, and then we'll go one by one as we seek to differentiate the difference between them. So growth, the growth category is for the use of a data-driven approach that drives significant business results. And that's simply it. You leveraged it, and you can point to an outcome. That outcome can be one of a number of different things. It's based on how your business focuses on critical strategic goals and what the growth is associated with it. Adoption. Adoption is focused on actually adopting a data and analytics capability that does boost business outcomes, but it's less about the business outcome the scope or size of the outcome that's achieved, but more that it's actually being leveraged by the organization. Now, one thing you're going to hear as I pass it back to Gayle and Damian is there's a lot of interrelationship between these categories, right? Adoption is change management, but there's a level of adoption in each of these other categories as well. There's a level of impact in each of these categories as well. But it's telling the story to focus on this element of the program or solution that you put in place. Innovation, which you're going to specifically hear about from Damian, is using a progressive analytics-based approach to solve a business challenge or to seize an opportunity. And it's not necessarily cutting edge. It could be bringing existing solutions together in a new way that no one's thought about before, but it's something that's different, that hasn't been tackled before, that clearly looks new. It's not that I put a new MMM solution into place, and Gayle will dig into this, but it's that you did something uniquely different that advanced your capabilities. Now, the last category is storytelling. This is, I'm going to be straight up, this is historically the hardest category for people to feel, but it's a combination, right? It's for leveraging data to tell an enlightening and visual story that encourages organizations to make insights actionable, right? This isn't necessarily just about the work that you do, but that's critical. It's the way in which you communicate the work that you've done that succeeds in bringing participants along in the journey to actually use whatever capability you're bringing. And that could be a tremendous narrative, or it could be really interesting and novel visuals that show the data and the insights that come out of the solution in a new way that's more relevant. So those are the different categories. I went a little bit further in definitions. I am not great at word count or specificity, but if we come back, I want to kick it back over to Gayle and then to Damian. So from a judge's perspective, Gayle, what have you been looking for in growth? What are the things that resonate? Maybe when you think about the finalists and the winners in growth last year, it's a good way to think about it. So what are you looking for? Oh, Gayle, you're on mute. I got to say it once. It always happens.
Thank you. Here, what we're really looking for is context and specific goal achievables. So what were the growth goals? What are the growth goals in the company? And then what is the scale of that relative to the size of the company? So we're looking for platform solutions, for solutions that hit the top line and the bottom line of the business, even if it's through efficiency, because a lot of solutions that we come up with analytics are process management solutions that deliver better, faster, cheaper. But we want to have some sense of, ideally, not just a percent growth, but some context for the absolute magnitude of that. So if it's a project, rather than an initiative, when you hear what Damian did, that's an initiative that cuts across stakeholders. That initiative type, more impactful and more difficult, think of difficulty of dive, more difficult to achieve project, actually transcends the specific project description of, here's the problem marketing had, here's what we did, and here are the results.
And before I jump to you, Damian, as you think about the category and how you evaluated where you fell in, last year's winner was Zillow, and Zillow launched an entirely new business model using analytics to scope out and evaluate how to do it, which was the buying of homes and moving into that game. And the growth, while it was an innovative approach, the growth there and their ability to leverage the analytics to enable that was what really stood out. And that's what differentiated. It was a giant leap forward in terms of revenue for the organization. Go ahead, Gayle.
So yeah, I just want to build on that very briefly. What was so interesting about this is this was a bold move. When you read the case, this was a major change. And what it really took, we also are looking for the character of the leader that leads this kind of change in research. on the future of research leadership, research insights and analytics leadership. And this took a lot of courage for this leader to actually step up and say, yeah, we're going to try this, to pitch it to senior management. And I don't know if any of you online or in the room have gotten any eye rolls from senior management when you recommended things, but it doesn't always go so well on first blush, and you have to be tenacious. And that was a level of boldness that we saw in that initiative. And I would say also speed. They accomplished that change, that business change, I want to say in less than a year. And that was, it was really kind of breathtaking to think about trying something completely different in a very short period of time and then being able to demonstrate the results.
So Damian, when you think about growth and you think about where you've entered in the past, when did you feel it was appropriate? And when did you feel that the story you were going to tell fit more in another category?
Yeah, when we won in 2018, we had a very compelling story about growth, which was that we entered a new category altogether, which we had very heavy support from the analytics team. So we had a very compelling story behind to present. And going back to the idea of how to pick the category on which to submit the award, we first started looking at all the projects that we have done the prior year. In our cases, it was in 2019. We looked for projects that were showing impact and clear business value, and we looked for projects that had some complexity or cutting edge from a technical innovation perspective. And then we also look for adoption, right? So it's all good and fancy, but if you don't get the business to adopt the insights and do something with them, then it goes to waste, right? So we look for all those characteristics, and we ended up choosing a combination of multiple projects that actually we could have submitted for any of the 4 categories, but we felt that we had a more compelling story around the innovation. And I would argue that any of the winning submissions for any of the categories have a little bit of growth, adoption, innovation, and storytelling in them for them to be a winning submission.
So we talked about this the other day as we were preparing. How did you decide to go to innovation versus not adopt? Because there are aspects of both growth and adoption in the work that you were doing. How did you feel that because cutting edge, you could do an interesting cutting edge thing and you can prove out the measurement, but maybe it's not adopted to make decisions, and it's still innovative because it could be along the journey. Whereas yours was adopted. Why innovation when you looked at it?
Well, I think it's a very subjective decision, but we carefully read the description of each of the categories, and we thought that our submission would be most appropriate for the innovation. Also, we thought that we have done something different that it hasn't done before, at least not on our industry. So we had the impression that we would have a winning submission on that front.
It was an accurate hypothesis. And the other thing that you talked about is those weren't the only 2 times that you've submitted. It's not like you submitted and you won each time you submitted. So what was that process like?
True. We actually submitted for the Genius Awards twice with no good answer. I mean, like, we didn't even make it into the finalists, which I think is fair given the amount of people that submit. It's hard even to get to the finalists, and this is a national award. So my advice on that front is that don't get discouraged and persevere until you find your voice and the way to tell your story, right?
Thanks. So Gayle, when you think of adoption, what are the things that jump? I mean, as both you and Damian have said, there's aspects of adoption in most of the things that we're seeing we hope to see. So how do you think of what stands out in adoption? And last year's winner was Sam's Club, who had implemented a new dynamic test and learn environment for making decisions. How does that, like, when you think about that, what made that adoption? Why was that more adoption than innovation or growth? Because it was applied for growth as well.
Well, I think the context for that is the jobs and organizational structures are being reinvented and redefined right now. So what was traditionally a research person would do a research project and would forward it to marketing, and marketing would forward it on, and it would go up the line, and it would either get passed or it wouldn't get passed and roll back down the line. What we see now and what we're looking for is an expanded view of stakeholders. And so in many cases it cut across, and Sam's Club is a great example. It was supply chain, distribution, marketing, finance. And so it was actually the research department literally, and the insights and analytics leaders literally putting themselves at the hub of the wheel, where maybe the marketing product manager had been in the past. And the second most important thing to that is enlisting the stakeholders, seeing a change in behavior among the stakeholders that led us to believe as a panel of judges that this organizational change and new solution would have lasting impact.
Great. And so
people's behavior would change along with the analytics and the data analysis.
So jumping over innovation, because we did cover it around Damian, going to storytelling, and I covered it a little bit. Like this year, we are definitely working harder to make sure there's clarity around it. So as you think about the submissions that you saw for storytelling, what should people be thinking about that makes it a successful entry that aligns with it? Last year's winner was Longwood Gardens, who applied not a novel technique, but they applied it in a novel way of communicating it to get buy-in. And it was the way they were communicating and showing the data that enabled the adoption. So what do you think about when you're looking for entries for storytelling?
Well, in great marketing, we're looking for messaging and branding that will actually make people's hearts beat faster. And I think that this storytelling category is one thing to stand up and read the numbers and to say, these are all the numbers, and let me tell you all about the data that we had. I remember years ago, my team came back from a meeting with management, and they said, Gayle, it was great. We didn't finish. And if that meant they actually hadn't given the answer. And so the idea is, how could you quickly and effectively and make an emotional connection with senior management, either sometimes now through a video, through ethnography, as you mentioned about Longwood Gardens, through some very creative, compelling ways to bring the consumer to life, to bring the needs to life, and to bring the impact in the organization to life. And so it's voices that go along and amplify the data. It doesn't take away from the impact of the data and the importance of that, but it's not just what you did, it's how you did it and the impact that it had told in a story, however you decide you want to do that. It's kind of a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Terrific. And so we're going to show you one of the benefits you get of entering into the finalist realm, which is a finalist video covering what you did. That gets produced for all the categories. We're going to do fossils. And just a reminder, if you go to geniusawards.com, you can see the videos for all the prior finalists, plus links out to detailed blog posts on what their entry was about, how they impacted their organization, and the characteristics that made them finalists and winners. So please feel free to visit the site. So here we go. Oops. Sorry, here we go. And confirm sound. Oop.
Consumers are looking for, if anything, more innovation from us, something that's more exciting in this time of difficulty and challenge. The key for us was, how do we become more directly linked to consumer feedback? How do we do that quickly? And then how do we do that broadly, recognizing that as a multinational company, yes, we have business in the US, but we're actually trying to introduce innovation that's appealing not to just consumers in the US, but consumers in Europe and consumers in Asia. We're wanting to make sure that the newness that we produce actually lands well with the consumer and produces the kind of sales outcome that we're hoping for.
One of the main innovations that we included in our project was to utilize artificial intelligence to be able to automatically track fashion trends around the world and then utilize those inputs to feed our product development process. As part of that product development process, we also incorporated consumer feedback from a panel of consumers that comes from 20,000 consumers around the world. And as a consequence of that, we're able to increase the hit ratio of our new products. The key challenge that we faced was for us to be able to train the artificial intelligence software to identify the characteristics of the watches using image recognition, and also to be able to utilize the outcome of the natural language processing from our consumer feedback to be able to build a landscape that makes sense.
Using our AI techniques and machine learning algorithms, we were able to uncover nearly 24 unique watch clusters, wherein each of these watch clusters had really a set of cohesive design features. And what we were able to do is that then use these clusters and then continue to monitor the changes in our consumer trends, not only for one country, but across the globe. Our customer-first AI-driven approach has allowed us to organically learn from our customers and deliver more breakthrough watch styles much faster to the market.
Everywhere you look, we need to have a digital obsessed mindset for process improvement, and at the end of the day, how do we better serve our customers? So technology is the single biggest disruptor, and I think source of competitive advantage in the future.
Hold on, there we go. So let's talk about what it takes to submit. We have spoken with a bunch of entries and asked what's your process, and really Damian's been helpful to think about how he did it on his side. So I'm gonna highlight the steps briefly, and then I want to talk to Damian about how he actually engaged with that at Fossil. So the first is you need to brainstorm, and Damian touched on that before. He went through the list of projects that they had gone through the year before, and they tried to determine what was the most interesting aspect of each of those projects that had the largest impact across the different categories that they could go into. Then you need to collaborate. This isn't just one person sitting down and figuring out what the data and the detail and the story are. Typically what we hear are there are a number of people coming together. It's not a ton of people, but collaborating to figure out how to best tell the story. And to Gayle's point before about the packaging of it, if you have creative resources that can help you clarify and tell the story more impactfully, it can be helpful. Then you need to, what's the plot? What's your story that you're telling? What was the mission, the team, the methods that you use, the challenges that you were attacking, the insights that you gained through the tools that you leveraged, and then the impact you had on the organization, which matched the video that we just walked through. If you thought about the structure, it's a very easy form to think about in telling your story. And lastly, you actually have to submit. So if you do all this work, you have to go to geniusawards.com and fill out the entry. So you tell a good story, you edit, follow the entry prompts. They're pretty straightforward. It's a number of questions in each category. It's not an exhaustive essay that you might have written in college. We're talking 250 to 500 words, maybe sometimes up to 750 words, plus visuals or videos or collateral that you can attach to it, is really helpful for your entry to stand out. So when you think about that, Damian, could you share some of the experiences you had moving through that journey to get to submission?
Yeah, of course. So as you mentioned, Marc, the first thing for us was to identify what are the different high-level projects that we have worked on the past year, and look for what is the advantage that we could have, what have we done differently compared to the rest of the industry that we can highlight. And then once we identify the project or group of projects that we wanted to work on, we had 2 people on our team that were in charge of building the story, providing the data, creating that plot, and then finally putting together the storyline, right? We did not use some of the creative partners within our company, to be honest, because our company is a fashion company. We have plenty of copywriters and very creative people, and we did not tap into that. So it was in our case, it was only an analytics team effort. Having said that, the projects that we highlighted were projects that were heavily collaborative, in the sense that they had participation from all sorts of parts of the company. And I think that we were able to highlight that collaboration within the storyline that we presented. And I think that that's part of the key to success, also to highlight that it was just not something that the analytics team did, but also something that where you tie together with other parts of the organization too.
And in terms of telling the story, was this the arc that you followed? Did you find it easy to complete the text that's associated with the entry form itself? Was it a complicated process for you once you pulled it together on your side?
I think that the biggest challenge is to identify the right project or group of projects. Once you have that in mind, then the rest flows through. But our team has worked in numerous different things that we were just trying to figure out, okay, what is the key thing that we wanted to highlight? The process in itself wasn't difficult, or completing the form online was not difficult. I think that what I would provide as advice is to start early, because it takes longer than what you think to polish the language and polish the story, to get the right visuals. I think that getting some relevant visuals that shows what you were trying to accomplish and what you did, it's also a great way of selling your story, right? So that takes a bit of time. So first piece of advice would be to start early on preparing.
Which is now. And Gayle, you've been threading through your thoughts really on the plot point of like what you highlight. I think it hits home a lot of the advice that you gave. Any other advice as you think about the submissions themselves for what was successful at catching your eye, or more succinctly or clearly communicating to you what those challenges or the impacts were?
Begin with the end in mind. So the storytelling, I love the storytelling kind of thematic way of approaching it, but you start by saying, this is the problem that we were faced with, and doing a good job while establishing the problem. And I think Damian's point is such a good one. You know, these things take time. And so it's really putting some good time into is that, because judges discuss things like, what was the magnitude of that problem? And it's always helpful for everyone online too. When you hear a problem, you're like, oh my God, that's what we're dealing with right now. It creates an opportunity in the industry for us to learn from each other, and then jump to what outcomes were achieved. And then go through, these are the reasons why, these are the differentiating factors. And it's quite clear. And my best example is the video that you just saw of Fossil's really wonderful submission. Is look at the titles of the people that were speaking and what they said about this project. And you have EVPs in operations, you have, people with retail backgrounds, you have people at senior levels of the organization that are speaking with the same level of intelligence and cogency about analytics as someone more in our field. So it's not kind of inside baseball.
And one thing I would like to point out is the size of the organization is not correlated to the impact of the entry. We've had very large companies, we've had very small companies, we've had nonprofits and profits as finalists and winners. So it's not about the large amount of people you bring in, it's the different parts of the organization and demonstrating the impact you have for your organization. Size is not really a consideration. Size of impact relative to the size you are is really, I think, what matters most.
I love that point. I think it's stories well told. It is what it really boils down to.
Yeah, Longwood Gardens is one garden in Pittsburgh. It's not a chain of botanical gardens across the country. It has a very localized but significant impact for the community that it serves. And let's talk about the benefits that you get. And Damian, actually, I thought you did a great job of articulating those. What did you get out of entering the Genius Awards, not just because you were a finalist or a winner as well?
Yeah, I think that one of the great benefits was to be able to retell the story in a way that was beneficial for us internally and externally on how we go about applying analytics to gain a competitive advantage. And that in general, just to go through the process helps you clear out that part. I think the slide that we have in front is about the benefits of actually winning it.
True. Well, yes,
And
but I would say that the recognition that you can get is also something that drove you a little bit. It helped you hone your story. Going through the submissions process probably helped make sure that you were telling the best story to your stakeholders about the work that you were doing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, but on the winning side, for coming out and winning, you did talk about the CSR part of it, that the prize is going to a charity that matters to you and your organization.
Yeah, for us that was important because it tied very well with the values of the company. We have an initiative called Make Time for Good, which is one of the key pillars within our company, and we feel strongly about giving back to the community. So the charity piece was quite important, especially the last year. As we were preparing the submission, we had COVID hit, and with all the consequences around our society and our economy and our community, local community and around the world, because the company is in several countries and we operate in over 80 countries, right? So the charity piece was actually quite a bit of a driver for us. And if you think about it, if there are 4 winners, each of the winners get to choose which charity to send $25,000, which is in our view like a huge amount of money to help out something that the team and the company feels strongly about. The other advantage was around hiring, right? Because when you're going through hiring in a very competitive market, as is the analytics market, you can point to the recognition from the ANA award and say, hey, look, the type of work that we're doing is truly cutting edge, and it has been recognized by a prime organization nationally. And the last 2 benefits are around bragging rights. The first one is internal, so to raise the profile of the team internally and raise the perceived value within the organization. And then the other one is external, because we actually mentioned this in a PR release later in the year, last year, so that investors would know what type of work we're doing within the organization.
Terrific. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a super quick point. And I would just build on the last 2 that Damian gave: internal, external, and personal. You get to practice and build your own skills, your communication skills, your synthesis skills. You're going to pitch it to senior management somewhere along the line. Your ability to describe what you did quickly to senior management, your elevator speech. These are really wonderful skills to build. And it's in real time. I mean, this is professionally judged and managed. And I just really think it's personally gratifying. It's a little daunting, as Damian has kind of referred to along the way, but really personally gratifying for your own skill building.
Yeah, and I would say the benefit of entering is that you're telling your story internally if you aren't already. If you are already telling it internally, the hurdle for doing the entry is even lower. And don't get discouraged because there are a lot of companies and practices out there that are entering into this, especially after last year's a significant crop of entries, and we expect to see that again. Last year was a really interesting year that provided challenges that were literally once in a generation that people had to respond to. I'm hoping to see a lot of innovative work done to quickly assess, analyze research, and then make quick decisions against. I know with the brands and marketers we work with, they were forced to move quickly to leverage techniques and data at a speed that they hadn't really before. My guess is there's some really great adoption stories out there of how brands got through last year, even if it's to protect and maintain their revenue and not about growth, or to find new sectors, or to find and support new ways in which you are offering your products, or the ways that you changed how your products or services were. I'm expecting to see really interesting things. But the process of entering should in and of itself, you should be able to identify the reward that you'll get by articulating your story and gaining the benefits that Gayle just talked about. Before we go to Q&A, any last thoughts, Gayle or Damian? First, thank you so much for taking the time today to come and join and share and hopefully evangelize.
One last thought, another benefit that you get is that you get something like this, which is a great conversation starter, because pretty much everybody that walks into my office asks me, what is this? It was also a great conversation starter with the TSA person that scanned the thing when I won it. I was like flying back from the award ceremony. So that was a very interesting conversation trying to explain exactly what this was. Yeah, that's another one of the benefits that you get.
Awesome. And it's a beautiful trophy. I forgot to say, it's a really nice looking data oriented design trophy. Gayle, parting thoughts.
You get an instant answer to the question, what's new in your area? What's new in consumer insights? What's new in marketing analytics? What's new? And when you're putting the entry together, you can say, we're applying for this. That's a wonderful opener to the kind of work that you did. What are the criteria? Who has won in the past? And then the very last thing I just want to say is, you have everything you need right here at your fingertips. Study the fossil video. Deconstruct it and study the fossil video. It's all right there.
And if you go back and across, you can see all the videos from the other finalists. You can see detailed blogs, right? No, of course. Well, Damian's, I happen to reference in other webinars I do, the work that Damian does, because it, as he mentioned, it brings together a variety of different techniques, as you heard in the video, to synthesize a new approach to leveraging them together. It's a very innovative approach, and it was very different than the other entries that came in last year.
But it included quotes. It included adoption, because it included the adopters, literally, and the voice of the customer. And that's a really, that's a pretty powerful way to communicate your story. So you don't always have to tell your own story. Others can tell it for you. And that was always really meaningful for all the years that I've been a judge.
Awesome. Tina, any questions coming in over the transom?
Yeah, I had a few. One is how advanced do the methodologies shared need to be deemed high enough quality for the judges?
I'm going to throw that to Gayle.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the best in analytics is when you can say, these have been some of the challenges that we've faced in mixed modeling in the past. It might be, I'm just making this up as an example. It might be real-time course correction. Then your solution to those challenges in the past, that's actually more important or equally as important as the sophistication of the actual analytic, is how difficult was it to come up with this particular analytic solution? Because some really simple sounding solutions have been so difficult for us to achieve in our industry over the course of time. So there can be some breakthroughs that may just not sound like they're all that big a deal, even to senior management. One time I had a CEO say to me, I thought we were already doing that. And it was what I thought was our biggest breakthrough. So it's putting it in some context and explaining why you believe that's an important methodological improvement.
And then just a couple of administrative inquiries in terms of submissions. One, can vendors submit on behalf of their clients?
So it's client side marketers entering, or the agencies that support them with permission from the brands themselves. So you can absolutely, if you're a vendor, go to your brand and point out and highlight the opportunity for them. I'm sure they would take your assistance in crafting entries, but the entry itself needs to come from the brand marketer.
And can you submit anything prior to the past year?
No, so we're focusing on the work that you've done in the past year. So look to 2020 for the things that you've managed to drive through. It could be something that you started in 2019, but that didn't come to bear in 2020, but it was still influencing and impacting the business. As we all know, analytics and data are not always a short-term solution, especially as you build upon what you already have in place. So just because you started it prior to 2020 doesn't exclude it. It's what did you do in 2020 that actually had impact in the growth of your organization in 2020, or protecting it from shrinking, which is part of growth, by the way. Innovation that was implemented in 2020, adoption that occurred in 2020, even if you began the project in 2019, and the storytelling that's associated with an effort that's focused in 2020. So it's got to have impact in 2020, but it's okay if it started before 2020, but the story has to sell through in 2020. I mean, Damian, the work you did in 2019, it came to fruition in 2019, but I'm betting that pieces of it were occurring in 2018. They just didn't come together in the way that they did in 2019.
Yeah, it takes a long time for things to come to fruition. So yeah.
Terrific.
Well, and I just want to make a very quick reinforcement of that point. In the storytelling, especially category, where people told that they tried different approaches over the years. So they're able to tell about not just successes, but what maybe are also known as failures, and then a breakthrough, and kind of how they got there. Those have been quite compelling for the judges as well.
And based on personal experience, I consider every failure an opportunity.
100%. My name is Gayle.
Well, we're at the close of the hour. Thank you, everyone. I just want to remind those of us who've joined us that we have a post-webinar survey that we encourage you to fill out so we can always improve upon our presentations. And again, this presentation will be posted within a few days on the ANA website. So please encourage your clients and colleagues to submit today. Thanks, Gayle. Thanks, Marc. And thank you, Damian, for this insider's view on how we're going to win. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Gayle. Thanks, Damian, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.